you have to understand the value that you bring, but you also have to understand that not everybody has the same relationship with your value that you do.
Yeah.
And some of the wealthiest people in the world are also some of the most stingy because they did not acquire their wealth by just throwing money around. I didn't understand that. There's a lot of people out there who try to build their business around something that's actually a weakness, not a strength. And here's the thing, you'll get way further if you focus on your strengths and understand what to do to mitigate your weaknesses, whether it's delegation, whether it's specific learning. That I've just met a lot of people who have convinced themselves they're really good at something and they're not. At one point, I was crawling through attics in 150-degree weather, like wishing I didn't have to go to a job. And I try to remember that. Like, I'm just proud of what I've created. I'm grateful for everything that we have, but I'm also very hungry for what we don't yet.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Me With Ish show. Today we have Kevin Palmieri, who is a CFO at Next Level University. He has a global top 100 podcast. He has over 1,300 episodes over across about 150 countries, 800,000 plus listens, multi-six-figure shows. He's also a podcast coach and overall an optimistic and an amazing guy. So welcome. Thank you so much for your time today and welcome to Be With Us show.
Thank you for having me, my friend. Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it very much. I'm excited to chat. I appreciate your optimism as well, and I'm sure this is going to be a wonderful conversation.
Let's hope for the best. So, the first question I usually ask, what kind of makes sense now because it's Saturday morning for you, is usually what gets you out of bed every morning?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. A lot of people would say like the mission gets me out of bed and impact and being the best I can be. And yes, that drives me, but I'm trying to be more honest with the fact that I'm just not a natural visionary who is super inspired and motivated by the future. I got a lot of stuff to do today, so I get out of bed and I try to just start checking boxes of what's the most important for me to keep things going. So yeah, I would say it's honestly, at the end of the day, it's trying to get better as me, right? Yeah. I just want to continue to elevate myself, because if I elevate myself, I can then elevate others around me, but that'll never happen if I don't work on me first.
Okay. And I kind of want to just get into it, and because I was curious about this when I heard you say this. So for me, it's an interesting thing that you said that, you wake up in the morning and you don't consider yourself as a visionary and you kind of just have tasks to do. And so it seems like you're very much in the journey and not really thinking about the future, which is, I think a lot of people aren't able to do. They often focus too much on the visionary and not able to focus on the now. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very interesting because I always think about this, that as a human, are we able to even live in a constant state of happiness or bliss? As I say, there's spiritual answers to it. There's some, other sorts of answers to it. But there's one thing that you said that I found really interesting was you said in one of the recent podcasts that you said, happiness is fleeting, but fulfillment is a journey. Mm. Can you expand a little more on that?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I used to think that happiness was the goal. And now I think I have an understanding, at least from my experience and the experience of those around me. Happiness is based on results. So if this interview goes well and I get to the end and you say, Kev, you're the best guest ever, you're awesome, I love you, I will be happy. That will make me feel good. Regardless of what happens during this interview, I am in the process of fulfillment. I am currently fulfilled because I am pouring into what I believe is the best use of my time. I'm growing and I'm contributing to something far greater than myself, and I am on a journey of that. My example for that is I like Netflix as much as anybody else, but 8 hours of Netflix is not going to fulfill you. Yeah, it might make you happy, but that happiness is going to fade. If you did that every single day for the rest of your life, you would not be a very happy person. You'd be seeking fulfillment. You'd be seeking deeper meaning, deeper purpose. You'd be saying, what am I here to do? It's not to watch Netflix. So yeah, I think a lot of us have it backwards, where we're looking for 80% pleasure and then 20% fulfillment, when I think it's probably shifted, where you're looking for a greater percentage of fulfillment and then whatever rest and relaxation, whatever happiness, whatever pleasure comes after that.
But how does one actually even focus on getting that fulfillment?
You do stuff. Here's the interesting thing. I find that the stuff that makes me happy is the stuff that I want to do. The stuff that makes me fulfilled is the stuff that I know I'll be grateful I did after I do it. So I
Okay.
think you start the process of refocusing there and saying, okay, what is something that I don't really want to do, but I know I'll be grateful for after, right? Going to the gym. Going to the
Yeah.
gym is not really about an instant result. It can create fulfillment because it's helping you grow and contribute to something greater. So I think you start there. You don't start by saying, what do I want to do today? You start by saying, what is best for my future today?
It's sort of like sacrificing a short-term dopamine hit for a more
Mhm.
long-term accomplished task.
Yeah.
Um, so, in your earlier days, you went to a baseball camp and you were captain there, and you said that that really helped you shape your future, and that's kind of when you really understood that you really enjoy doing these things. Can you talk about more about like why you love doing that and how that shaped your future?
Well, you did your research, huh?
Yeah, thank you.
You
Yeah,
did your research.
I spent a while. Yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting. I never saw myself coaching. So I do a lot of coaching. That's
yeah,
predominantly what I do. I spend most of my time coaching podcasters and peak performers. But I remember when I was younger, I was a baseball player. And when we were in high school, every year we would do this baseball camp where a bunch of kids would come and we'd have a station in the gym, we'd have a station on the field, we have a station on the batting cages. And that made me realize, retrospectively looking back, how much I enjoyed coaching, how much I enjoyed letting somebody make a little mistake and then kind of pivoting them towards a positive direction, how much I enjoyed working with somebody through their struggles. Many of the
yeah,
struggles that I had, right? I had to overcome a lot of things in order to get good at baseball. So
yeah,
anytime I could add value to that, that really, really landed with me. And I didn't really understand this until I was in my mid 20s when I started coaching people on relationships, and I was single and I didn't study relationships and I had no
yeah.
idea how I knew anything that I knew. But I remember I dated this girl and then we ended up separating and we were really good friends. We were still really good friends. And she messaged me and said, "Hey, I'm in a new relationship. Can I ask you for advice?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course. Like, what's up?"
Yeah.
And I helped her with that relationship. And then I helped her get away from that relationship and get into a better relationship. And it made sense at that point where it was like, oh, I might be able to help people in unique ways that I didn't realize. And that was one of the best things in the world once I understood that.
Yeah. When you were doing this coaching, was that like a, more like from a business point of view, or were you just helping your friends out with relationship advices?
I was just helping my friends. Yeah.
Okay.
There was, this is how you know, and again, I'm by no means, I wouldn't say I'm a relationship expert. I'm not a guru in
Yeah.
anything,
Yeah.
but one of the ways to figure out what you are more catered to do in the world is what comes really easily to you. For me,
Yeah.
predicting whether or not a relationship would fail or succeed has always come very easy to me, and I never knew why. Then when I started to understand like what are the most important pieces to a relationship, I just had an unconscious competency when it came to that. So that's a really good lesson for anybody out there. If there's something that comes to you really easily, that might be a hint that you should be doing more of that, and that could
Yeah.
be more in alignment with your purpose than you realize.
I mean, I think you did mention as well that one of your biggest competencies has been of creating like lasting relationships and building, strong relationships. And that's
Yeah.
always been your like strong point. So, how does that even translate to, because when you're saying relationships, I'm thinking just beyond romantic relationships.
Mhm.
I'm thinking more like even for a business or day-to-day friendships with family members, business partners, clients, etc. So how did it translate to that? Because in mid 20s you didn't start a business by then, right? You were still working just a normal job, and
Mhm.
then you probably translated these skills into starting a business or your podcast.
Yeah, I started the podcast in 2017. I went full time into it in 2018. But here's the interesting thing. So if you think about what inspires, or let's just say what motivates a person in terms of what facilitates action, many people are relationship based. So all I mean by that is they don't really care about getting results. They care about continuing the relationship. They care more about the bond that you have than anything else. That's a relationship friendship paradigm versus some people are results driven. So you and I right now are results driven. We're not we're not necessarily here to become really good friends. We could become really good friends, but that's a byproduct of us trying to grow together. So
Yeah.
one of the things I learned fairly early was some people are in the relationship to grow. Most people are in the relationship to be in the relationship, and then whatever byproducts come from that. And that helped me tremendously in business because the majority of our listeners are emotionally driven women. And they're not necessarily listening to us to get better every second of every day. They're listening to us because they resonate with us. And the amount of value we try to deliver to them is based on why are they actually here. So understanding why somebody is in the relationship, whatever that means, friendship, family, intimate relationship, boss, worker, whatever it is, understanding why somebody is in the relationship determines how you communicate with that person. And that is just a very, very important thing to understand. I will communicate with an engineer very differently than somebody who, you know, is a liberal arts major or something like that,
Yeah.
right? Just because
Yeah.
they're motivated by different things and they also have different communication styles. So yeah, that's really where it came into play. Understanding that every single person, you communicate with them in a different way to get a different result.
Okay, that's interesting. And you said your audience, primarily your listeners, are mostly, I think, uh, women, right? You said
Mhm.
females who are more emotional. So was that the thing you started off with, or is that something you learned as you progressed through and found out, oh, these are the people that we listen to, so let's just double down and cater to them now?
Yeah, when we started this, I thought, I mean, I have tattoos, I have a sleeve. I love combat sports. I
Yeah,
expected we were going to have like a bro podcast.
yeah.
That's what I thought in the beginning.
That's
And
how it
then
started as well, right? With your friends, I think. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, that's how it started. It was like, I want to be Joe Rogan. That's it.
yeah,
That's as much as I knew in the beginning. I want to be Joe Rogan and I want to drink and smoke weed on the podcast. That's where it started for me.
yeah,
And then the people that started reaching out were all women. And I was like, interesting. Why? Why is this happening? In retrospect, it's because I had very low self-worth. I was a pretty vulnerable human being already, and you attract what you are, not what you want to be. Really, you attract what you are. So
yeah,
a lot of our audience has low self-worth. And as we started to realize, oh, interesting, our demographic is primarily female, my business partner and my co host and I, Alan, we focused a ton on our characters. It was like, okay, yes, we need to make money as a business. Yes, we have to figure out how to do this. But really, what we have to do is we have to get rid of any of the toxic traits we have. We have to be the most supportive, the most inclusive, the most patient, the most trustworthy men we can be, because that's what our audience is going to value. And
yeah.
once we realized that and we started coaching people behind the scenes, that's when we started to understand, oh, it makes a lot of sense why our demographic is the way it is. Because if you think about it, I don't know if there's another podcast with two guys who are as focused on being in shape and being successful, but also being good partners and good men.
Yeah.
I think it's just very rare. And I think once you come across that, hopefully you stick around.
Yeah, I think it's very rare, and I think like actually the opposite's true. Probably there's a lot of people that are opposite to what you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
but there aren't many like you. So it's interesting. I'm not sure if you've actually tracked this, but it would be interesting to know. So, firstly, like, do you think back then when you started, you said your self worth wasn't that high; it was pretty low, and you were insecure about a lot of things. How have you grown since then? And how have you noticed some of your like listeners or audiences have grown as well? Or do you think like they just churn out once they feel better, or do they stick around with you guys?
Yeah, I feel this is the interesting thing, and you'll get this too as you continue podcasting.
Yeah.
Your audience can only grow to the level that you've grown. So, one of the beautiful things about being a podcaster, we do an episode every day. So, there's always something going on in my life where I can vulnerably share what I'm dealing with, and I can vulnerably share how I'm overcoming that. And then somebody can take that lesson and run with it. So, what what was my biggest weakness in the beginning was probably low self-worth, and that has definitely grown and grown and grown as I've set boundaries, as I've understood my actual value, as I've learned so much, as I've been rewarded in so many ways. So yeah, my self-worth is the highest it's ever been. I'll say the most accurate it's ever been, because having
Nice.
high self-worth,
Yeah.
you can have delusionally high self-worth too. So
Yeah.
that's been very beneficial for me. And here's the thing. I can deliver content in a better I can deliver content in a more valuable way when I have an accurate level of self-worth, because I'm more assertive, I'm more sure with my words, I'm more confident in the moment. So it's interesting how me pouring into myself and growing that part of me can also help me grow other people. And we find that people do stick around because at the end of the day, everybody's looking for community and everybody's looking for belonging. And when you find a place where you're valued for you and being the authentic version of you, it's hard to go back. So yeah, most people stick around.
And do you have any stories of where you've spoken to any of your earliest listener and talked about their growth since they've started listening to your podcast?
Yeah, we had we call her OG Amy. She was one of the first listeners we ever met. She messaged me one day and said, "Hey Kev, I want to." It was this. "Hey Kev, I go to school and I'm so afraid to go up to people and have conversations. I always feel like I'm an outsider, right? Everybody's having conversations and I always feel like I'm on the outside looking in. I'd really love to build some confidence around approaching people." And I was like, "Well, first of all, everybody's afraid of that, so you're not alone. I hate that too." Amy lived close to me. She lived like within an hour. So I said, "Let's go to the mall. You and I are going to
Yeah.
go to the mall and we're going to approach people." And we went into a store. I had her ask the people behind the counter how much something cost. Great conversation. Awesome. Right? Check the box. One done. We go to another store. She does it again. We go to another store. She does it again. We go down to the food court. I know I want you to ask how they cook the rice. How do they cook the chicken? All of that. So we're getting ready to leave that day. And there are these mechanical zoo animals that you can rent. Like there are these zoo animals on wheels at the mall for some reason. Interesting business. I don't know. But we're getting ready to leave. And Amy said if we were really brave, we would rent those and we would drive those around the mall. And here I am like, I don't want to do this. This is going to be terrible. But I'm there to help. I want to lead, right? I want to be
Yeah.
brave. So I have a video of Amy and I on my phone driving around on the mall, driving around the mall on these things. So somebody who didn't think they could start a conversation with strangers, quite literally by the end of the day, was seeking people's judgment. Then she ends up going back to school, even though she didn't think she was smart enough. She got a 3.9 GPA. Then
Wow.
she moved from a small town in Rhode Island to Nashville, Tennessee, and now she has her dream job. So somebody who didn't believe that they could start a conversation with a stranger evolved so much over the course of 4 or 5 years.
That is amazing. That's do you are you still in touch with her or
Mhm. Yeah, she was on our team for, I don't know. She was on our team for several years. She ended up moving on to something else, but yeah, she posted in our Facebook group yesterday.
all that? Congrats. I think those are like nice things. I remember like for me as well when I like did my very first episode, I posted on my Twitter and I didn't have any many followers, but I just had some people from my college, and one of my friends just came up to me, and I think I had like a few listeners at that point, and he came up to me and he's like, "Yo, like I've been wanting to start like a sports related podcast, and I listened to yours, and it kind of motivated me to start mine." And I was like, "Damn, like this is one person who I kind of knew come up to me in campus and tell us," and I was like, I just can't imagine what it'd be for like people like you that like they're constantly getting that. And I think like that's probably worth much more than anything else, where people like reach out to you and like thank you for what you're doing. So
Yeah, it's the best. It's the best. I think that's the interesting thing, right? In the beginning, and this is a great example. In the beginning, you're not going to get any money, most
yeah,
likely, but
yeah,
but if you're doing it for that reason, if you're doing it for impact, you just got that. So that's
yeah,
like you just got a little charge to get you to the next level. And then when
yeah,
you get to the next level, maybe you'll get 3 people that say, "Hey, that podcast episode you did really, really inspired me." Okay, cool.
yeah,
Now that gets you to the next level. So
yeah,
it's interesting, and it all depends on why you're doing it in the first place.
yeah. That makes sense. I think with podcasts it's a bit difficult as well because people actually have to well, depending on how long the podcast is, but people have
Mm.
to actually sit down, like for example an hour, and actually then make a judgment. So I think if someone then comes up to you and tells you, hey, like this was really good, like it really means a lot more, because it's like that person was willing to sit down for an hour and listen to you talk with someone else, and and then
Yeah.
came up and give an opinion. Because with the song or something else, you upload for a minute or something, it's not the same as like actually sitting down. And because podcast is very like personal, and you really get to know about a person. So if someone's listening to you, that really means like, oh, like they care about you and find value. So
Yeah.
um I wanted to. So you have a co-host as well. Actually, I think you have like a lot of podcasts, because I think you started a new YouTube channel podcast growth university, which I was going through, and I found it useful actually. So anyone interested in starting a podcast, I think that's like a really good channel.
Thank you.
And so in your main one, you had you and your co-host, I think,
Mhm.
and you talk about if you do want to for someone else who's starting and looking for a business partner, co-founder, or co-host for anything. There's four things. There's core beliefs, core values, core aspirations, and core competence. Can you go a bit more like deeper into it, into someone who's listening, and probably thinking about whether they should go for a co-founder or co-host or not?
Yeah, absolutely. I get asked all the time, should I have a co-host? Should I have a business
Yeah,
partner? Like, how did you figure out whether or not to partner with somebody? For me, it was completely different because I knew Alan. I went to school with Alan. Alan's a genius. I knew if I got around Alan, I'd win. And
yeah,
I also think we both had a knowing that we needed each other to accomplish the goals that we had set. So for me, it was a little bit different. And I didn't know this until after. But if you think of it like core values, okay, so core values, what's a core value? Charity. A core value is family. A core value is being on time. A core value is personal development. A core value is something that you share with your business partner that you both value, right? Maybe it's Alan and I both value family time. So time with my wife, time with his partner. So we will always understand if it's like, hey, I'm running 15 minutes behind, I needed to do something for my wife. That's a core value. We have that in
yeah,
balance. We both believe that. So
yeah,
core value, boom. Core belief is something that you believe about the world, and this usually comes from your past. So we have a core belief that self-improvement can change the world. We have
yeah,
a core belief that vulnerability is a superpower, not a weakness, right? So we both share that. Now, we didn't always. We've worked on that together, and that has really, really, really helped us. A core aspiration, an aspiration is what do you want to accomplish, right? So it could literally be a core goal, it could be a core dream, whatever it is. So we want to bring holistic self-improvement to the masses, and we want to have the most successful podcast in the self-improvement space.
yeah,
Hence why we do the things that we do in the ways that we do.
yeah,
And then I don't know if I want to call it a core competency or maybe a collaborative competency, because
yeah,
my thought process is Alan is a very logical thinker, long-term thinker. He's a visionary. I'm a
yeah,
very short-term emotional thinker, but I'm a really good operator. Day to day, I'm
day to
crushing
day,
it.
yeah,
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 that's my unique strength. Alan's
yeah,
is long term. So my core competency and his core competency complement each other really well. So if you sit down with somebody, just as an example, I have two podcast clients who I predicted would not work out as co-founders and co-hosts because one of them is all about the money, and nothing wrong with that. I'm not making that wrong.
yeah,
The other person is all about building relationships. They don't get each other. They don't have the same core beliefs, the same core values, the same core aspirations, and complementative core competencies. So I had a real talk with them and I said, hey, you should really think about separating because you're not going to be as successful together as you would be apart. It's not going to work. You're not going to have multiplied success if the core four aren't really aligned. So yeah, that's what I would say. I would say sit down and write out like what are your top 5 core 4 and
yeah,
then compare them to your business partner, compare them to your anything, your friends, your intimate partners. It's not just business. You can really use that in anything.
yeah. Makes sense. um, but to what extent would you be willing to overlook one of them? So, for example, you have someone with similar beliefs, similar values, similar aspirations, but I think like the competence is always not as collaborative. Maybe there's some things that can be taught, or some sort of skills that you can
Mm.
actually teach them, right? So, like, how to what extent would you be willing to overlook that for a certain amount of time, or for you, is it like if either one of them fails, then it's not like meant to be?
One of the interesting things about me is the competency matters the least to
Yeah,
me. If you're a humble human being who's willing to learn, that to
yeah,
me overcomes any lack of competence you might have. So,
yeah,
yeah, for me, I care more. I care way more about your character than I do what you're capable of in the short term.
yeah,
Because we had somebody who we were interviewing to be on the team, and we're like, "What are your unique strengths?" And he was like, "I don't really have any, but I'll work really hard. I'll take feedback really well, and I'll grind." It's like, all right, cool. You're welcome to the team. The fact that you said I'm not really great at anything, but I'll work really
yeah,
hard, you're
yeah,
probably better than you think, and you're
yeah,
already more confident than you think to admit that. I
yeah,
understand because that's the interesting thing, right? your core competency could be authenticity. Your core competency could be vulnerability. Your
Interesting. Yeah.
core, ownership. Those are
Yeah.
all highly, highly valuable traits. And I think a lot of people might overlook those, but yeah, I'm very focused on that.
Okay. Yeah, that's what was interesting knowing, because that's what I've kind of gathered from just listening to you so much. And that's actually interesting. And I keep saying this. I feel like you have so many podcasts out there. Like, it's just like a lot of your beliefs and stuff. Like, anyone can just, you're so out there. It's just so easy for anyone to get to know you when you have like, I'm not just even talking about your episodes. I'm just saying like how many episodes you've been on. So,
Mm,
it's really like easy to know who the real Kevin is.
I appreciate it.
And I actually have a question about it that I'll probably ask you a bit later. Because I feel like it can kind of be like, it's like it's not always a good thing, and that's I kind of wanted your opinion on that. But I'll ask you a bit later that towards the ending.
Okay.
So I know that you do. You said you talked about you do like a self-help coach. Like your podcast is more related to that, right? Um, and do you ever do like organized meetups or plans and events? I think I was going through Instagram. We did like next level on live some show of yours
Mhm.
recently, and so I was wondering if that's something that you do as well very often, like seminars, because like a lot of like self help coach do that, like Tony Robbins or Gary Vee and stuff like that. So
Yep.
is that something you're trying to like go into as well?
Yeah. So we basically won't start anything unless we plan on doing it forever. That's kind of just the way that our business is set up. So we do 7
Yeah.
episodes a week. We do group coaching every other week. We do one virtual live meetup every month. So we just jump on Zoom completely live, free for anybody who wants to join. Every right now it's once a year we do a live event. Once a year we do a retreat. So yeah, right now it's kind of, and then so 2 times a year we do a charity event. So yeah, we have a lot of stuff beneath the podcast that a lot of people just don't know about yet because it's not the big thing, right? The
Yeah.
podcast is the thing that you see the most. It's the most content, but underneath that, there's a lot going on with live events, with virtual live events and that type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy to me that you keep saying the 7 episodes a day. That's what you're doing, and that's your main thing. Like, it's crazy to me how you even come up with 7 like different things to talk about every single day. Are you? I know. I mean, I know a lot of it is based on your real life thing and what you go across. Um, but do you take inspirations from something else, or is it mostly just like about what you're witnessing and going through in your life?
I try to have the frame of I'm always trying to be open to ideas. So it's almost like imagine if you were a musician, right? Imagine if you're a musician and you're thinking about writing a song. You're going to notice like the birds chirping. You're going to notice that more than I would because you're hearing the noise and you're thinking, that could go into a beat. Or you're hearing the words that people say and you're thinking, I didn't know those 2 words rhyme the way they did. I'm trying to do that when it comes to stories, when it comes to experience, or when it comes to lessons. So anytime something happens to me, I try to say, like, what could I take from this and share with other people? And I realize the more I experience as a human being, the better off the episodes usually are, which is kind of counterintuitive considering I sit in this office for 12 hours a day, pretty much every day. So that makes it hard sometimes. But
Yeah.
yeah, I've noticed that. And I've talked to Alan about that, where it's like, hey, man, I shouldn't, and this is a fine line, I shouldn't aspire to have my schedule as booked as yours because I'm the creative here. And if I lose
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
creativity, I lose a lot of the value that I bring to the table. So I need to have experiences with my wife. I need to be doing things outside of this office because that's where I come up with these episodes.
Yeah. That's a very powerful statement. I really love that what you said, that the more experiences you have, the more creative you'll get to be, and then
Mm.
the more things that's happening in your life. And I correct me if I'm wrong because I think you know more about this, but I always think about this as well. Like when a lot of people like, especially younger people who haven't done too much or gone through a lot and talk about like building personal brands or something, and I just always feel like it's interesting because like I think it's almost like a waste of time because if you want to grow anything, right? Like for example, like Twitter or YouTube or Instagram or whatever, unless like you're trying to be like a influencer in terms of like you're trying to be an attractive influencer, but if you're trying to be like an influencer who's like, uh, you know, doing some sort of other value. I think it's just so important that you first gain enough experience before you
Mm.
jump into all these things. And some people say that you should do it like together, but I just like, for me, it's like if I see someone else doing that, like I just feel like it's so not authentic that I would never want to like follow them. I'd be like, okay, why am I following him? Like I'd rather follow Kevin, who's been through these really low points, who's taken a lot of losses, he's taken a lot of wins, and that like he knows what he's doing. He's a bit more experienced, and
Mm.
I don't know, that's just kind of my point of view, but I might be wrong in that. What do you think about it?
No, for a long time, I used to get super self-conscious about the fact that like we didn't go viral.
Yeah.
And then it crossed the chasm one day where I was like, I am so grateful we didn't go viral because I would not know nearly as much as I do. Here's the thought. Would you rather fly on a plane with a pilot that got lucky to get there? Or would
Yeah.
you fly on a plane with somebody who has been flying for 40 years? They've gone through thunderstorms. They've had to land in the wind. They've gone through, tough things. I'd rather go with the person who took longer to succeed
Yeah.
because they know more.
Exactly.
They just
Yeah.
do. But to
Yeah.
your point, we live in a viral place where it's like, this is how I grew, from $0 to $1 million in a week. It's like, you can't. Here's my thought. It's very hard to reverse engineer the anomalies. It's just very hard.
Yeah.
There's a reason why it's called
Anomaly.
playing the lottery.
Yeah.
It's not called winning the lottery. It's called playing the lottery. And one person wins. You can't really reverse engineer that. So I am in hyper agreement with you on that, where I think, it's more important to understand how you won than it is to win. Because if you don't understand how you won, you can't reverse engineer it, and you surely can't teach it.
Yeah. I think that's a fair point. I agree with that. And also I think, I mean, in terms of viral, yeah, things like the anomalies go viral anyway, so that makes up a good story and people would want to follow that. But the thing is, again, like, for me, just like, okay, those things, again, it's called winning the lottery, again, as for a reason, right? So it's more likely that I will be in a journey that's not like that, so why would I want to, follow that? Then,
Of
like,
course.
and I think it's just, with anything I started, even for this podcast, I just realized like how much work it is. Like, then when you started, like, and I think, um, it's good to have that sort of like naivety when you're getting started with anything new. Like if you're working on a startup, a business, a podcast, whatever. So because if you're being too practical, you're never going to start it.
Yeah.
If you just know everything, then you're never going to jump in. But once you jump in, I think you have to know that it's a lot harder than it actually is. Like, because a lot of people are not talking about the journey or the low points in life, but you're just seeing, I think especially now, it's just so much more amplified. You just see the end results and not as much as the journey.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, like, every time I try to focus more on that, and I'm like trying to see, like, okay, like, because this is what 99% of the life will be. It'd be the journey, and then in the end, like, it's going to be the victory. And that's like most of the CEOs and people, like, only become that when they're 50 or 60 or older. So it's like, okay, now we're talking about them, but like, what was going on between the time they were 18 to 60? Like, that's the pain thing. So
100%. I used to say the same thing, where it's literally, it's 99.9% whatever you're doing now, you'll be doing forever. And eventually you're never going to accomplish everything you want to accomplish, most likely. It just doesn't, I don't know if I'm ever going to get an award that says you have the most successful self-improvement podcast. I don't think that's ever going to happen. So I will be on purpose in alignment on the journey for the longest period of time, to your point. And that's why it's so important. And here's the other thing too. You learn more from your losses than you do your wins. When you lose the Super Bowl, you have to do everything over. When you lose a soccer match, you have to question everything. When you win, you just say, hey, how do we do what we did this year, next year? And it's just not necessarily as powerful.
Yeah. That's a fair point. And kind of like talking more about that, I'm interested to know some of your lowest points in your life and what did you learn from them?
Oh man, I would say probably the lowest ever. I several times had suicidal ideations, just not wanting to be here. Life was gray, life was dark. I felt helpless, hopeless, trapped, stuck, not good enough. And I learned a lot from those times, but I think the thing I learned most was asking for help is such a strength. The two times I felt the lowest, I talked to somebody and I didn't feel that low for that long. So that's a big thing. Is like asking for help is a strength, not a weakness. By definition, the stuff that is challenging, we don't do it because it's challenging. It's not because we're weak, it's because it's a strength. It's a strength to do something that requires that level of courage. So that's a big one. Here's another one. This was very interesting. So this was like, I don't know, 3.5 years ago. I had somebody reach out to me who wanted to start a podcast. And they're like, I heard you have a successful podcast. This is my thought. I want you to produce my show. I'm going to give you $1,000 a month to do it. So I'm going to give you $3,000 right now. I'm going to cut you a check for $3,000.
Yeah.
This is what I'm looking for. What are your thoughts? And I sent them a message back and I said, $1,500 a month. Like we're not going to do it for $1,000. We'll do it for $1,500 a month. Yeah. And this person was a multi-millionaire. I didn't think $500 a month mattered that much to them. Yeah. They said, no, I'm willing to do 1,000. I'll also let you promote on my show, blah, blah, blah. I turned it down and said 1,500. And then they never talked to me again. That was it. That was the end of that. The lesson I learned in that is you have to understand the value that you bring, but you also have to understand that not everybody has the same relationship with your value that you do. Yeah. And some of the wealthiest people in the world are also some of the most stingy because they did not acquire their wealth by just throwing money around. I didn't understand that. You have a net worth of 30, 40, 50 million dollars and you're worried about $500 a month. That doesn't make any sense to me. Now I understand that the behavior is based on the system that acquired the results in the first place. That was very, very important for me. And then I would say the last thing is it's not necessarily like one dark moment, but I have had so many times where I just didn't feel good enough on this journey. You know, we've interviewed some very successful people. We've interviewed some very smart people. And every time I would get off and I would feel like garbage about myself. And the lesson from that is maybe you're not, and I'm putting this in quotations for the listeners, maybe you're not smart enough yet. Maybe you're not talented enough yet. Maybe you're not enough, quote unquote, yet. But it doesn't mean if you don't focus on the weaknesses that they can't turn into strengths. I think for a lot of us, that sounds disempowering. But if you don't feel smart enough, there is a potential that maybe you just haven't learned what you need to learn yet. And that's okay. It's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing at all. When you're 15 years old, you're not a good enough driver yet. There's a reason you can't get a license. That's okay. Yeah. It doesn't mean you can't be in a couple of years. So that was a very important lesson to understand how malleable we are as human beings.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. That was a lot. I like the quotes as well in it. But how would you? So I think like a lot of what you talked about has to do with like imposter syndrome and stuff as well, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's what would be some actionable advices though to kind of? I mean, we all know that we have to improve and stuff like that. But what would you like? How did you get out of that hole yourself when you were interviewing these people and you felt like, oh, like damn, I have a long way to go. Like, what did you do to improve yourself at that point?
I do something, and I still do this. I call it specialized specific learning, where am I currently the weakest? It's kind of like the gym analogy of like, what's the muscle that's lagging the most that I have to train the most? You know, whatever that is. Like for a long time, that was legs. But now my legs are one of my best features because I work so hard on them. Yeah. That it's okay. Why do I feel so? Alan and I interviewed somebody named Steven Kotler. Steven Kotler wrote a book. He's written many books, but he wrote a book called The Art of Impossible. And he understands flow and he's a genius. He's a very, very smart guy. And after that interview, I told Alan, I was like, dude, that was brutal. I feel like an idiot. And then I focused on peak performance. So I think the next book I bought after that was literally called Peak Performance. When you get the feedback of not feeling good enough, of having imposter syndrome, of feeling lack, you use that as inspiration to get better. And here's the thing, and we just did an episode on this. You replace one fear with either a more aligned fear, a more constructive fear, a fear that's going to get you over the hump. So rather than having the fear of sounding stupid on the podcast, right? I'm afraid I don't know enough on the podcast. Let me turn that fear into I'm afraid I'm going to be outgrown if I don't get better. That's a more constructive fear, and it will create action. So yeah, I would say sit down and write out what are your 3 strengths, what are your 3 weaknesses. You probably don't have to focus as much on your strengths as you do your weaknesses right now, because your strengths are probably already rolling. So what are the specific things we can do to learn about the weaknesses? I'm not a natural numbers guy. I'm not a natural business guy. I am not a born entrepreneur. That is all learned, but that all came after me saying, I don't know anything about math. I don't know anything about money, and I don't know anything about business. I am in trouble here.
Yeah. Um, it's true. I think you also talked once about, which is true to what you're saying, is like when necessity, I think, leads to a lot of like innovation stuff when your like back is
Mm-hmm.
against the wall, and that's kind of what you're talking about right now as well.
Yep.
Like when you have to learn and when you're scared of being outgrown, then you have to just improve yourself. Um, and So it's like real quick, actually, I don't know if you're allowed to say this. Are you allowed to say who was a multimillionaire whose podcast that you were having a negotiation with?
It's nobody anyone would know, so it wouldn't
Okay.
even be worth it. Yeah, it's not like a world-class celebrity or something. It's just somebody who's
Right.
successful in real estate.
Okay. Okay. Nice. Yeah, I was just curious. Anyway, so looks like you have a lot of things going on, and I was curious about like how would the day in the life of Kevin Palmieri look like? What's your day-to-day routine?
Yeah, it's interesting. It depends. So I'll give you 2 versions, 2 quick versions. One
Yeah.
is Monday, and then the other one is every other day. So Monday, Alan and I record 7 episodes. That's our goal, right? Our goal is to record all of our episodes on Monday, so we don't have to do it throughout the week, and we can focus on coaching and
Hmm.
revenue driving opportunities. So Monday, I usually get up at like 6. I'll go to the gym. I'll come home. I'll shower. I'll eat breakfast, and then from 10 in the morning until 6 at night, I'm sitting in this chair in this studio recording episodes. Every other day is very similar, where I want to get up between 5 and 6. I want to go to the gym. I want to get my 30 minutes of learning. I review the podcast every day. I post on social media. I do all that. I want to get all my habits done. But after that, it's I either do, 4 or 5 coaching calls and 2 podcasts, or I might do 5 podcasts and 2 coaching calls. The majority of my time, I'm sitting in this chair, being on camera, talking to another human being. And that's like 10 a.m. until 6 p.m., Tuesday, Wednesday,
Do you,
Thursday, Friday. And then Saturday, sometimes I'll do like 3 or 4 calls as well. That's pretty much it, though. It's kind of boring, and it's not as glamorous as I think people
what
might.
happens after 6 p.m.? Like, how do you wind down for the day? Do you just
I just
spend time
spend
with
time with my
family?
wife. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I spend time with my wife. It's usually like we'll spend 3 hours together. I try to go to bed around 9. So maybe we'll eat dinner, or we have like a deep talk night where we've been messing that up. We haven't been as consistent because of me. But
Yeah.
it's how do I make sure that I'm filling my cup so I can get back after it tomorrow? What can I do to make sure my relationship is improving as well? And that, yeah.
Do you not get tired often? Like you're talking for like 8 hours straight with people, and then you have like you still have to keep talking after that. Does it not get exhausting? Like do you not get burnt out?
Yeah, no, I do. I definitely do sometimes, because one of my wife's love languages, or like one of the things that fills her cup, is deep talks. But
Yeah.
I do, like, my cup is overflowing by the end of the day because I've had so many deep talks. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's been a very interesting thing to understand, that it's like, well, sometimes it's just like anything else. Like sometimes I'm going to have to push through whatever fatigue I have to make sure my relationship is succeeding. And the other thing too is it really depends on the season you're in. We're in a very like growth season where I'm grinding like pretty hard. I was grinding harder like 6 months ago. I was really, really grinding. I'm still grinding, but I understand that the schedule I have today is not the schedule I'm going to have forever. And
Yeah.
that allows you to understand like a lot of this is just momentary. So
Yeah.
that helps too.
Awesome. I don't want to keep asking you too much about it because your podcast, but I'm curious, like, because you're doing so many podcasts right now, right? And you have so much content there. Is there like a something that a long term thing that you have in mind, or are you just doing podcasts just to help people out who want to like get guests on? Like,
I
what's
want
the
to be
end
the
goal with it?
Yeah, I want to be the best. I want to be the best I can be. I want to be the podcast guy.
So it's
I
just
do.
more reps for you. The more people you
I
do. Yeah.
yeah. I saw a video today from somebody who's like, I'll outwork anyone. And it's like I like that. I don't want to have an ego attached to that, but
Yeah.
it's like I like that. I think I did 400 or 500 podcast episodes last year. Like that.
Wow.
I like that. I like
That's
that
like
because
more than that's like almost like 1.5 every day.
it's more than most people will do in their career. But
Yeah.
here's the other thing though, right? This is my full-time job. This fills my cup. I love this. It's Saturday morning. I am more than happy to be here. Like I enjoy this. I don't want to be doing
Yeah.
anything else.
Yeah.
And I do believe it's something that I have a unique talent for. So
Yeah.
that helps too, and it fills my cup. But yeah, I want to have the most. I want our podcast to have the most episodes ever. I want to be on every single show possible. I want to get as good as I can get based on experience. That really is the big thing for me. And then here's the other thing too. I always feel like I'm playing with house money. Like I don't deserve to be here. I don't feel like I deserve to be in a lot of the positions I'm in. So I want to make sure I'm earning it. I don't ever want to get entitled to like, oh, we have a successful whatever. The only reason we have a successful podcast is because we operate like we don't. And every day we operate like we don't. If I stop doing any of the things that got us to the dance, we do not get to dance anymore. And I don't ever want to lose sight of that. I don't ever want to lose sight of that.
It sounds like a winner's mentality. Like
I appreciate it.
just want to be it kind of reminds me of uh, I mean I do I used to like follow a lot of soccer, and it's like I think people talk about like Michael Jordan, but it's a lot of like related to like I don't know if you know like about Ronaldo, Cristiano Ronaldo,
Mm-hmm.
and like you hear like interviews and it's kind of like similar. Like he wants to play the most games. He does not care like how it is, like in terms of like what games or what goals he scores. He just wants to keep doing it,
Mm-hmm.
every rep, every match, like no matter what, just keep doing the most as possible. Um, and that's interesting. You want to be the best. You already said like Joe Rogan was something that you like started off looking into, and I think like I mean, the way you're going, Pace, I don't even like Joe Rogan. I don't think he really goes on other people's podcasts as much anyway.
Mm-mm.
So,
well, he doesn't have to though. I mean, when Spotify cuts you a check for 100 mil, you don't have to do. He's the other thing too is that has shifted a lot for me. I used to want to be like that. Now I want to be my own unique version of the best podcaster I can be. And this is the other thing. I'm planning on starting another podcast. I don't know when, maybe like next year, but I want to have a solo podcast where I interview people where it's not just self-improvement.
yeah,
It's not peak performance. It's like, I want to use my conversation skills to make a valuable podcast. So
yeah,
I'm going all in on this podcast thing and whatever. I'm going to do it for as long as humanly possible. That's my goal.
yeah. That's sort of like how my podcast is structured right now. It's a bit more like asking people, but it's a lot more interview styled podcast because it has to do with like me thinking that I don't like people are going to listen to me. They want to listen to Kevin. They don't want to listen to me, right? Because like I think I have a good knack for asking good questions and being curious and having a good amount of knowledge and being good in research. So that's what I try to do, and then I let my guests have the flow and just speak and give value to people, and I just try to guide them to that.
Do you do solo episodes?
No, I don't. So right now, all I do is
I'm going to get you to do some solo episodes.
I've thought about it, but like I've also thought like there aren't a lot of things that I'm an expert at. So it's like I don't know what I would talk about it, but maybe I can now that I've started this, I'm learning from people. So it's like I've thought about maybe starting a newsletter or something. Like I don't know. There's been like different options because I'm trying to like I'm interviewing people and I'm learning a lot from everyone I talk to, and then I'm doing research on them and then research on what like industry they're in, and I'm just like wow, like I'm gaining a lot of knowledge. So
yeah,
I haven't done any individual. I haven't really thought about it as well. I've just kind of like interview people and
okay.
Yeah. But honestly, I think that the restriction with that is, especially when you're not that big, is finding good quality guests. And that's an issue. And because of that, your frequency is like, tainted. So if I want to be uploading one episode every single week properly, like I don't have a team behind me that's going to be outreaching, or I don't have a good and strong network where I can just like hit up someone like who's making like 6-7 figures in their business. It's like, it's that itself is time commitment for me, like to sit down every few hours and cold DM, reach out to people and stuff. So, yeah. And so, we just got a little bit more time. So I just want to ask you 2 quick questions to kind of wrap it up. Actually, 3, my bad. So one is, what would be your piece of advice to a young entrepreneur? And not just in podcasts. Podcasts are entrepreneurship.
Yeah, this one's a simple one for me. Get wildly familiar with what your biggest strength is and what your biggest weakness is. There's a lot of people out there who try to build their business around something that's actually a weakness, not a strength. And here's the thing, you'll get way further if you focus on your strengths and understand what to do to mitigate your weaknesses, whether it's delegation, whether it's specific learning. That I've just met a lot of people who have convinced themselves they're really good at something and they're not. Or here's the other thing, or they've convinced themselves that they're really bad at something when they're not. And if you go into it with that false belief, either way, you're probably not going to win. So yeah, be wildly specific and certain about your strengths and your weaknesses.
Awesome. And this is a question that I'm curious to know what you would think is, well, do you care about legacy? And if yes, what do you want your legacy to be like?
Yeah, I have an interesting relationship with legacy where I don't think about legacy as what are people going to remember me as when I die. I think of it as how is somebody going to remember me in terms of the way I made them feel tomorrow. That's how I think about it. Like
Wow.
the way you and I have talked, from me being on the pre-call to you following me and DMing me and me like that's all based on, I just want you to know I'm a good person. That's kind of what runs my, I send videos and audios to people. I coach people for free in my DMs. I want people to know that I'm a good human who really, really, really genuinely cares. And if and when, I guess it's not an if, when I leave this earth behind, they'll know that they had a positive experience with me. But here's the interesting thing. Most people I may never talk to again.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sure you and I will talk after this, but I go on a lot of shows where I may never talk to those people again. The audience may never hear me again. This may be the first time they're hearing of me. I want it to be a good experience for everybody. And I want people to leave in a higher vibe than they did before I got there. That's what legacy means to me.
That's an interesting take. And I kind of got that as well when I was watching a lot of your interviews, is even with the guests, you really made it feel like you really made them feel heard. And I think you were like really personal on a level like where you were talking, even like small things. I noticed like you mentioning the name quite often. I think that's like one thing, like, it gets a bit more personal when you just, even especially if you're meeting someone for the first time, like we just talk, like refer to them as a name. It's kind of like personal. And that those like
I didn't do that here, Ishmeet. I didn't do that here because here's the thing, right? This is good. This is a failure, a mistake. In Riverside, where we're recording this, I can't see your name. Your name is on the bottom screen, and I don't want to break rapport by looking down every time.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think with us, so in our case, when the way you DM me, I felt like that personal thing, like the way you responded real quick and just, I don't know, like the way you were, just the message was. So I didn't really think about that in this podcast. So like for what it's worth,
I
like,
did.
it doesn't matter.
I did.
Appreciate it. Yeah. See, that's the difference I was talking about. To wrap it up, I had one question for you, and it's sort of my opinion. So, are you ever scared of how much of you is out there? Like, because podcast is very personal, right? And with you, it's even more personal because you aren't interviewing anyone else. It's just you doing solo episodes for most part. And then also you've been on so many other podcasts. Like, there's so much of Kevin out there. Like, do you ever think like maybe you won't be the person that you are right now 5 years down the line? And does that thought ever scare you that there's so much of you out there? And do you ever like fear that?
Yeah, definitely. One of the things I've been dealing with recently is feeling like a fraud, where I'm not allowed to have a bad day, because every time I'm on an interview, I try to give it everything. I just try to give it all, and I try to be positive, and I try to be inspirational, and I try to teach. And sometimes it's like, you're not allowed to hit snooze. You're not allowed to have a bad day. Like, you have to be on 24/7, 365. And if you're not setting a good example. That's been something I've been struggling with a little bit lately, just based on the amount of stuff going on. But yeah, I mean, if you go back, this is interesting. The first ever episode I did ever, or the first interview I did, I literally swore in the intro. I said, "Welcome to the MF and Hyper Conscious Podcast." And it was like, because that's what I thought I wanted to be. So yeah, there is definitely a level of fear that somebody will go back with their current level of awareness based on my current level of awareness and be blown away at how much awareness I didn't have back then. Yeah. I definitely have fears around that. I don't know. I'm blessed because I don't get a lot of people that reach out and talk trash, which I'm not inviting that. I don't want that. I don't aspire for that. So I'm happy about that. Most people who reach out are very respectful, which I'm grateful for. But again, all things considered, we're not that big yet anyway. So it doesn't really matter at this point.
I mean, yeah, I guess so. But the funny thing about the internet is it's almost inevitable, right? Once you reach a level like this, there's going to be someone who kind of like, you could be the best person in the world and it still wouldn't be enough for them. So
that's a them thing though.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the interesting thing. Like I've had that where people reach out and it's like, oh, you act like you're out here saving people's lives. And it's like, little do you know, 2 weeks ago, I was on the phone with somebody debating suicide and I got them help. Like I actually did. I did exactly what you just said. I didn't. Now, again, here's the thing though. This is a them thing. They aren't fulfilled. They're not aligned. They're not super happy with what's going on and they're trying to take it out on you. And I think just understanding that helps.
Yeah. And maybe if they listen to your podcast more, they would probably get better.
It's possible. Will they ever? No, not if they hate me, but it's definitely possible. Yeah.
So actually I have one more question. So in the beginning, I asked you what helps you get up in the morning, and to wrap it up, I asked like, what helps you sleep at night?
Interesting. What helps me sleep at night? Just being proud of what I did, being proud of the person I was. At one point, this was all a dream. At one point, I was crawling through attics in 150-degree weather, like wishing I didn't have to go to a job. And I try to remember that. Like, I'm just proud of what I've created. I'm grateful for everything that we have, but I'm also very hungry for what we don't yet. And I try to keep that balance. But yeah, what helps me sleep at night is I'm a good person trying to do really good in the world. And at the end of the day, nobody can really take that away from me.
Awesome. That's a great answer, Kevin. Thank you so much. Before we wrap it up, there's anything else you want to say? Final minute.
Let's see what I have. One of my favorite quotes. Maybe you've heard me say this on other shows. I don't know, but this is something that has helped me tremendously. It's a question. Are the people in your life the best from your past or the best for your future? A lot of us have people in our lives because they've always been in our lives. And we don't even know why. If I said, why is this person in your life? You might say, well, we went to high school together. We went to college. We used to party. We used to exercise, whatever it is. My question for you is that person going to help you get the life that you want? Or are they just here because they've always been? That was a question that really helped me. So that's always one I try to share with people.
That's a powerful question to end it by. And I hope the listeners think about it and ponder about it. I am. So thank you once again, Kevin. Thank you for your 1 hour and appreciate it. I'm confident I'm going to keep doing it and be consistent with this and then have you back for hopefully round 2.
Consider it done whenever you want. I'm happy to come back. I enjoyed this very much.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Take care.
You're very welcome.